Hey friends, welcome back to a new video. My allergies today are so bad. That is why I sound nasally today, but just bear with me. So today I wanted to talk about minimalism and my relationship with minimalism, how that changed when moving from a more rural area to a big city. So for those of you that haven't really followed along or are new here, I lived in quite a few different places in the past few years. I lived in a very small village of about 3,000 people, or less than 3,000 people even, and then moved to a pretty big city, or rather big city, of more than 500,000 people. So I realized that my relationship with minimalism changed. I have to say that living in a small town or in the countryside, minimalism was definitely easier. I wasn't confronted with things that would tempt me. I was decluttering so much more, and I found a lot of joy and ease with minimalism. I was more in touch with nature. I took a walk in the woods almost every single day and just had nature in my backyard, and that is where I sought refuge. In the small town, there was only a supermarket, there was a pharmacy, so pretty much only the necessities. There weren't any shops where you could browse around in. And the people there living in the town were more laid back. They spend their free time tending to their garden, or I've noticed that a lot of times family and friends would visit them. But now moving to a big city, it has definitely shifted. I find it harder to stick to my minimalist values. And I do find that the city life has kind of influenced me more towards consumerism. I realize that because on every street corner there are some cute shops that you can browse through. The city has more of the up and coming new things. People are more up to date with the newest fashions and technology and just trends. And even the people walking about are so much more fashionable. You definitely notice that they are keeping up with what is new. I also noticed that the city people seemed so much more busy. I realized that everyone is talking on their phones even while they're on a jog, which I don't know how they do. I would be so out of breath. They always seem really busy, rushing from A to B. And it seems like it's always about making the next business deal, making it to brunch, owning the newest things. And on the weekend, the city center is always packed with shoppers with huge bags full of stuff that they just bought. And also we just moved into a new place, and there were things we kind of needed that we didn't have. And slowly I started to buy a little more here and a little more there. And in some way I let myself get influenced by these things that I was now surrounded by. And although there are a lot of things that I really love about the city life, there are also things that I don't really like about living in a big city, and one of those is the more consumerist side of things. I do find myself to be quite vulnerable to these more consumerist ideas and values. So when I realized this, I thought I need to do something about this. So I try to think of ways to go back to my values of minimalism and go back to the simpler things, having less, and that having less is more, and I don't want to have that much stuff. But at the same time, I feel myself craving buying stuff. So for me, I've identified 4 things, or I guess tips, on how I want to come back to the more minimalist mindset and lifestyle and values. And the first thing is to stay away from temptation. This is, I guess, the most basic thing to do. If you're tempted by something, then try to stay away from it. So for me, it definitely is browsing cute little shops. When I see the things in the window display, I think to myself, oh, that would look nice in my house, or that would look nice on me. These shops tend to wake the consumerist in me, but I know that buying these things won't fulfill me. It's just this rush that I get in the moment. But in the long run, I know that buying those things will not fulfill me or sustain me. In the same way that I guess when I'm hungry and I crave ice cream, I know though that having ice cream as a meal is not a good idea because that won't sustain me or nourish me the way I want to nourish myself, if that makes sense. So I know what tempts me and I try to stay away from those things to make it easier on myself. So why make it harder for yourself if it doesn't need to be that way? The next thing I do is that I fill my cup with things that I love. So I realized that the more miserable I am, the more I tend to want to shop things. And I guess that's also where this whole concept comes from. I think they call it like therapy shopping. No, not therapy shopping, where you go out and buy stuff because you're unhappy to try to make yourself feel better, which does not work. In a way, I believe that we buy stuff to fill this unconscious void that we might feel, and we think that buying things and that temporary rush that we get will fix the feeling of maybe a certain emptiness maybe that one might have, but it's more a, as I said, temporary excitement than real joy. And there are other things that bring me so much more joy, and that is joy in a sustainable way, like creating art. I find that is so meditative and brings you so much peace and joy, but also baking little treats or cooking fun, delicious meals that I know will nourish me, and that is also an act of love and of service to other people that I love. I also found that doing yoga in the morning is something that is really grounding and helps me to keep this very peaceful mindset. And these are all things, or little things I do to fill my cup, to feel at peace and to feel joy in a very subtle but sustainable way, if that makes sense. But also just spending more time in nature, as I did when I was living more rurally. Now, as I said, in the city, nature isn't as present as it is on the countryside, but even little things like gardening and just getting your hands dirty in soil is so therapeutic and makes me kind of happy and giddy, like a child gets happy and excited about things. And it's a joy that is, I feel like, very different than the more surface level joy of buying things. Just little ways that I can make myself happy in a sustainable way that is not consumerism. The next thing is to surround myself with things that are in accordance to my values. So I've talked about this a lot of times, that we are the 5 people or things that we spend most of our time with. So either physical people in your space, but also, I guess, virtual people, like people you watch on TV, that you consume on YouTube or on Instagram. We tend to subconsciously mold more towards those kind of people. So in the city, I'm surrounded by people that are maybe, at least from what I can see, more consumers than I would like to be. So I feel myself gravitating more towards being like them. So if it makes sense, my logic was to balance it out with people and content that are more like what I want to be like, or who represent my values. So watching, for example, YouTube videos of people who have values that like mine or similar to mine. I also found that watching documentaries about nature and about animals helped me realize that there are so many species in the world and that I'm just one tiny little person, and that consumerism just doesn't respect the planet in a way that I would like to respect the planet. And a way that you can also surround yourself more with things that are in accordance to your value is to design your home and your space, your safe haven, into what you would like your life to look like, or just to reflect your values in your space. So to have things that are sustainable in your space, or to have maybe more minimal things in your space, not to have your space too cluttered, not to have anything in your space that sparks consumerism, but maybe sparks activities that do fulfill you. For example, maybe you can have your art supplies out, and that will more easily inspire you to create art and to fill your cup. And the last point is to keep in mind your why, or to have your bigger vision in mind. So to remind yourself of why you wanted to go down the path of minimalism in the first place. Is it because you know that buying things isn't fulfilling? Is it because you know you've gone down the path of consumerism in the past and that hasn't worked for you? Is it because you want to preserve the environment and preserve nature? Is it because you want to save money? Is it all the above? And just having little reminders of why you want to pursue minimalism. And you can do that by surrounding yourself with people that have those values, or people that you aspire to be like. And also you can have something along the lines of a vision board or mood board, but you don't need to have it physically. For example, I like to picture my, I guess, goal in my mind. I have this image of what I want or hope my life to be like in 5 years or 10 years or whenever. And then I ask myself, is my consumerism going to bring me closer to that goal or that dream, or is it actually going to take me further away from that? And that, I find, for me personally at least, is very, very helpful. So I personally picture a beautiful cottage-like home with a big vegetable garden, lots of flowers and plants that are planted in a very environmentally friendly way, in a permaculture way. And I envision animals that I was able to rescue from certain farms. Just a very peaceful, serene environment close to nature. And that is kind of like a dream or a goal of mine. And yeah, when I envision that, I can better see what I want and better decide which path to go down to get closer to that dream, if that makes sense. Another method of visualization is also to picture, I guess, what you don't want to have. So instead of picturing what you want to have, picture what you are scared of. So for example, you can picture someone who is very consumerist, who has a lot of debt and a big house and a big mortgage and financial worries and a lot of clutter in their home, a lot of mental stress, and you know that that's someone you don't want to be. Maybe it is a more consumerist version of yourself in the past that you don't want to fall back into. So see what works for you. For me personally, the more positive visualization works better for me, but I think everyone's different there. What I'd really be interested to hear is whether you live in a big city or in a smaller, more on the outskirts or in the countryside. Have you moved around between both, and have you realized that the relationship with minimalism changes for you depending on where you live? That would be something really interesting. I wonder whether I'm the only one that noticed this, and what are ways how you strengthen your relationship with minimalism. What are ways that you make sure you stick to your values? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love it if we could share and chat a little bit. I hope that these tips of mine were helpful for you. Going through this is just another reminder that minimalism isn't a switch. It isn't an overnight thing. It definitely is a path that I've been on now for years. I think 3-4 years maybe. And it's been really interesting. I learn more and more every single time and every single day. And I just realize how much further I can go. I guess it's just a lifelong learning process. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. I have more minimalism related videos on my channel, so subscribe for more. I also do a lot more on just intentional living, whether it's through food or through other lifestyle topics. Hope you stick around, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.